Hey everybody, congratulations on finishing up your midterm. Let's go ahead and jump straight into the forums of the week. I'd like to start right here with the May Nye reading. I'm asking you to do two things this week and think about two things. One in an extra credit forum if you want, and the other in your mandatory forum. And so on the one hand, we're beginning to see groups like the Irish and other European folks be considered more and more and more white. On the other hand, we're seeing groups that began theoretically as white, like Mexican Americans during the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, they begin to be triangulated towards people of color. And so in 1924, we see the Johnson-Reed Act. This is one of the most important immigration acts of all time that really kind of like sets the tone for who gets to come into America for the next 40 years, post 1924. So let's take a look at it real quick here. So I'm on page 28 of the May Nye reading. I know this is a tough one, and so if you're having a hard time, go ahead and jump straight to this chart and kind of think about what it means. And so if you take a look at the chart, this is basically telling you how many immigrants can come to the United States based on a national origin after the year 1924. So I want you to pay attention to the groups that have the largest quotas, and I want you to pay attention to the groups that either have small quotas or no quotas at all. You'll notice that Latin American countries in this chart are not present. This is largely because of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo and their eligibility to citizenship, particularly because of Mexico. So check it out. If we take a look at Great Britain and Northern Ireland, you can kind of see here, they have a quota of 65,000. If we look at countries like Germany and the Irish Free State, these are countries that are also sending over a large majority of immigrants per year. And so if we take a look at other countries like this 100, right? This immigration policy says that aliens ineligible to citizenship cannot immigrate. So this is the lasting legacy of the Naturalization Act of 1790. And so what does it mean that a country like, for example, Cameroon has a total of 100 people in their quota? What it literally means is that you can migrate from the nation of Cameroon as long as you're considered white. So in other words, let's say that the British had a military station there and someone who was white and British was born in Cameroon. They were eligible for whiteness, although their nationality was, right, from the country of Cameroon. And so I want you to kind of think about some of the things as you're writing your discussion forum post. First, what does it mean when most immigrants for the next 40 years are going to come from 3 to 4 major countries and really a small kind of area or region in Europe? What it tells me is that we're kind of thinking about who's a normal immigrant and who's a not normal immigrant. And so we're beginning to divide this line between who is acceptable and unacceptable. The Irish, for example, if we click back, let me go back into our weekly curriculum here. And we click on the Mortar of Assimilation. This was rendered in 1889, and it's a depiction of the ways that the Irish were thought of within the context of citizenship. You can see that they're kind of drawn in ways that are animalistic and thought to not be assimilable into the quote-unquote mortar or the melting pot of assimilation. And so I want you to think about how the normalization of their immigration and the abnormalization of other groups' immigration quotas really kind of help blend them into other European groups. Let's click back here. I want you to also take a look at this 1924 resource. So in the same time that the 1924 Immigration Act is created, so is the 1924 Border Patrol. As you may have mentioned in your midterms, the 1924 Act really begins establishing this idea of anti-Mexican sentiment. And even though Mexican Americans are in some ways eligible to whiteness, they're not really treated as white. And we saw that in the census. By 1930, we see Mexican Americans actually be considered Mexican. So even though there was no quota system designed for Mexican American people, what we're seeing is that the border itself plays a huge role in understanding how Mexican Americans are ultimately going to be policed. So as opposed to having an immigration quota, the Border Patrol is established and it polices Mexicans based on their health, based on attacks, based on their fitness for citizenship. And we'll talk about this more as the weeks go on. But I'm hoping that by looking at an immigration act and looking at the establishment of the Border Patrol and thinking about how the Irish and the Mexicans are kind of moving in different directions in Americanization, I want you to write about that in your forum. All right, hope that helps. Get in there, and I will talk to you soon.